Are you conscious of your addiction? Refuse to be defined by it? Not satisfied with living your life on the surface? Are you drawn to deeper meaning and purpose? And believe that it's possible to grow through your addiction to experience true freedom? Well, welcome home. Share the journey from addiction to freedom with your host, Michael Gregory.
So welcome back to another episode of From Addiction to Freedom, and I'm so pleased to have this episode because I'm here with my very good friend Mossy. So
G'day.
Mossy and I surf together every day, and we've kind of done a bit of life together, and he's really supported me through some stuff, and
Vice versa.
and so we've been there for each other really, and through that I've really got to know Mossy as someone who I really respect. He's got I think he's a really real person. And I didn't really know it when I first met him, but he's actually got quite a real addiction to freedom story. And so I've really invited him on so that we can have a conversation and see where it goes. There's no real plan except we're going to start in a place and we'll see where we get to. So Mossy, thanks so much for doing this and, being open to, sharing a bit of your life.
I'm excited. Thanks for having me, mate.
Yeah. So just when I know a little bit about your history, probably I don't know as much as maybe I'm going to know, but maybe take us back to, I think it's really relevant to go back to where you started, perhaps, as a young man or even child. Like, what was it like for you?
Yeah, I guess for me, I was raised in a broken family. My father left when I was 5 and I was one of 3 boys, the youngest, and I grew up in Housing Commission.
So for people who don't know what that is, Housing Commission it's kind of a government-paid affordable housing, and so it tends to attract people who, what we call in Australia, battlers.
Yeah.
Would that be right?
Yeah. Yeah, so mum being a single mum, always worked, and we were pretty much left to our own devices. Like we would just run wild. So from an early age, I was exposed to lots of drugs, lots of alcohol, lots of pornography. There was a lot of pedophiles in the area, all that sort of stuff I was exposed to at a very young age. But obviously being so young, it just seems part of what's happening around you in your environment.
Yeah. And
as I grew up, I was massively insecure, really didn't know who I was. And I had my mum met a guy who was a really good stepdad. And it's important when I tell this story that I bring him honour and I don't disrespect who he was.
Yeah.
But like all of us, there was flaws there, and because of his own childhood, he really didn't know how to father. But he also made the decision to take on 3 brats, and we were brats.
Right.
And, so through all this whole thing, I never got fathered.
Yeah.
So my natural thing was to try and find myself in other people, almost like a chameleon. I would blend and a lot of that would involve being attracted to people that were either drinking heavily or taking drugs and all that as I progressed and grew older. And it become, because I didn't know who I was, it become common ground, you know, and I suppose a safe place for me to go. And so I just found myself feeling empty most of the time. So I would, this is reflective conversation, not cognitive,
at the time,
emotionally intelligent, working through this stuff when I was a young fella.
Yeah. Can I just take you back there for a sec? So in the household, there was a period when, did you know your dad or?
No, I ended up catching up with my dad later in life, and in fact he worked for me, and there's a sad story behind that, and he was an alcoholic.
Right.
Yeah. So my real father was an alcoholic. He drank heavily. All through my stepdad, my mum, and my dad all smoked heavily. So I was one of those kids that grew up with both parents smoking either side of me and just sucking that in a closed room, especially in winter.
Yeah.
We had the gas fireplace, two smoking parents
Yeah,
either side,
right.
just sucking all that stuff in.
Wow.
And I wouldn't say my stepfather was an alcoholic, but he loved a beer, you know. So he drank nearly every night, and weekends were big sessions. So
Well, when your dad, was he there for a period, or
my real dad, or no,
how old were you when he kind
I
of?
was in my aunt. He sort of reconnected us when we were 18, but that was just too emotionally overwhelming for me, and felt forced, and didn't feel natural or organic at all. And both my brothers really had big chips on their shoulders about my dad. It was just very black and white. You left the family, you can't build a relationship.
Right.
But
so did you feel like when he left, how old were you?
I was only very young. I was only 5. Yeah, I don't really remember a lot of it. I don't even remember him as a kid. My eldest brother did, and you could see how that really affected him growing up. But that's his story to tell. So I had really strong on my heart, all part of this whole journey of trying to get away from addiction and all that sort of stuff. And I would be classed as a highly addictive personality, if that's actually a class. But I had strong on my heart to go and find my real father, because I felt incomplete. Like I felt like I had to close that chapter. And I found him just as he was retiring, and he was not in a good way. And, you know, I helped him, you know, sort of retire and move house and all that sort of stuff. And he worked for me at my business for a while, but we never built that relationship. And because in his mind, his whole idea was I'll live in condemnation because I was a bad dad and I left.
Oh, so
he could never open himself up to healing.
Right.
Whereas I was bringing everything to him to create a healing process and help him out. But because of his own addictions and where he was, and like I said, like he wanted to condemn himself for his own behaviour, he couldn't open himself to the possibility of being whole and healing. Instead, he chose to drink and do those stuff to numb the pain.
So you'd obviously grown a lot between when he left and you reconnected with him to be able to reach out like that, even though he wasn't really kind of reciprocating as much.
Yeah.
So what happened back then that I mean, you must have been a very different place by then. So what happened back then before you got to there?
So very early on in school and all that, we were drinking alcohol and smoking pot, and a few of the other guys were doing heavier drugs. I was never really into the heavy drugs, so I dabbled. But so I was in my, I think I started drinking at 12. Like maybe 13 at high school with my friends, steal the alcohol from the parents' place, and we'd drink at high school. So we'd be drunk. We had a teacher that had no sense of smell, so we would smoke in the classroom, and had those big bottle glasses, Coke bottle glasses, so she couldn't see. So she had no sense of smell and she couldn't see. So we'd all sit at the back smoking, you know. So
that's really old school.
It was really old school. You'd be probably expelled now if you did that.
Oh, and so would the teacher.
yeah. So through that journey, and this all come down to I didn't know who I was. Yeah, I hadn't been fathered, and that's a real passion of mine. Is I just didn't have that male person in my life. And my eldest brother, who I really looked up to because of his own insecurities and because of his brokenness, he was super violent. Right. Super violent. In fact, I was really scared of him. So
there were obviously situations where he really hammered you.
Yeah, and it was his persona that he put on. It was his own insecurities, but what I craved was that relationship, And sadly, we don't have that today for circumstances what I won't go into. But my middle brother and I, we've been through this healing process and we're doing really well and we have a great relationship, you know. So, but that's what I craved and I just couldn't find it. But so all this pain, all this insecurity just bubbling up inside of me, the only thing that would numb the pain was alcohol and drugs.
Right.
So.
And your stepfather didn't mentor you, or what was his impact on you? What was he like?
He was a hard worker. He was, and I'm just being cautious because I want to honour him.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I'm happy to talk about it, but
only what you feel comfortable. Totally.
Yeah, he was a hard worker, but when he passed away after talking to his brother, and we found out that he used to take a lot of beatings, and he used to take a lot for his siblings, and
when he was young, right?
So his father parenting style, he had no kids of his own. He took us on when we were, I think I was like 8.
Right.
So it would have been 8, 10 and 12.
That's quite a sensitive age for a boy because you still got that kind of sensitive, almost innocent young boy, but also on the cusp of becoming young man.
Yeah.
It's a very sensitive, impressionable time, I think, 8.
Yeah, it was just craving a father figure. And because we weren't his and because of his own history, he had limited capacity to show any sort of emotion, or he didn't have the emotional intelligence. But his view was, I will work my ass off and I'll make sure that you have a roof over your head and you will always be fed and you'll always be safe.
Right.
And to me, like, that's just amazing. That is a guy that needs to be honoured for that.
Yeah.
Because
that's hard work.
Yeah. Well, through his own history, he could have been a really damaged person.
Yeah.
He had some issues that, you know, he couldn't work through, but this is back in the day when they didn't talk about their emotions. Today we all talk about our emotions, you know.
Well, actually not all.
Well, you know,
like,
but it's a more acceptable, you know, you have places like Beyond Blue and, you know, that hashtag talk to me mate, and like it's becoming more and more. But back then they didn't talk, they went to the pub.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how they resolved their issues over drunk talk.
Yeah.
You know, so it was, and then that made them feel better and put a Band-Aid on the situation. They could go for another week. But
so did he carry on that violence that he experienced in your life and in your brothers?
Yes and no, not in regards to, like, he was never violent towards my mum. He adored my mum in his own way. He was more of he would get angry.
Right.
And he would lash out.
Right.
Verbally, because he just didn't know how to communicate any other way. And it wasn't that he wanted to be that way. It was just the only way he knew. So he was a loving dad in regards to he wanted us. He wanted to know that we were safe and that we were cared for, and in his own way. And
I can really hear that you felt provided for and loved in that way.
Yeah,
from him.
So that gave me a foundation of, no matter what, you grind, you work, you always provide.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that he instilled. It doesn't matter, you know, it was many times I had 3 jobs, and that's what probably the number one lesson I found from him. But in the background, there was still this emptiness, this yearning to be, I guess, in a tribe, connected, really connected. And I can honestly say that I only really, like, I'm almost 50 and I only really feel it now. You know, I have a small group of friends. I feel that they're my tribe. I feel that it's not hard. It's not false. I'm authentic and they're authentic. It's not something that I try. It's been forced or manipulated to make myself feel better.
Yeah.
And I think that's only happened because of the progression from addictions, self-growth, coming out the other side, going, I know who I am.
Yeah.
So in my early teens, there was lots of drugs, lots of alcohol happening, and it just progressed for a very long time. I met a girl. I've got a beautiful son, Ben, who you've met, who runs the business for me, who I'm super proud. And his mum's an amazing mum, but we just didn't work together. It was just too toxic for us. And
When you were quite young, you got together?
I was 24 at the time.
Yeah.
So
and that's when you had Ben.
that's when we had Ben. So.
That's interesting because my first son was when I was 24.
Yeah.
He's pretty young.
You know nothing.
Oh, and suddenly all your friends are out partying, traveling.
Yeah.
You know, and suddenly you've got this young person.
Yeah.
It's I don't know about you. I experienced a big download of responsibility, and like it's like I was cracked open emotionally with this young child. I mean, is that anything like you experienced?
No, I didn't experience that because the relationship was toxic, and that's from both of our faults. You know, it's not just one side. And Ben and his mum went far away when he was 1. And what that did was bring up all those insecurities of my father leaving, which I never wanted to be that person.
Oh, right. So you viewed yourself, even though you didn't intentionally leave or anything, but the thing broke up, but you viewed yourself as similar to what you never wanted to be with your father.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow.
So in my head, I had this whole picture that I created where I just wanted to love someone, build a white picket fence house and provide security and have this family and really be able to father and pour in and love and all that. That's what I had in my head. But I didn't have the capacity to pull that off yet. You know,
like the internal capacity.
Yeah, the internal capacity. So when they left and Ben had gone away, I went into probably the darkest hole where my drug use just went through. I'd take anything that was in front of me. My only rules were I wouldn't take needles. Yeah. I wouldn't inject myself with anything. That was my only rule. And that was not a rule from that I created. I just hated needles. Yeah. It wasn't about the drug. I just hated needles.
Yeah.
So I went into a really dark hole where, you know, for many years I was just a zombie and just killing the pain through drug use. And
so would I be right to say that was it driven primarily by like trying to numb the emotional pain, or was it also driven by like cravings as well, or both?
I think it's a bit of both. Yeah. It was just this emptiness and the craving to fill it.
Yeah.
You know, and the temporary fill was drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
But the emptiness was the real driver.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you know that at the time?
No. I was in my early 20s. I had no idea. Moving towards my 30s, I was completely just clueless. Right. No one around me that was mature could go, hey, mate, I just think you need to back off a little bit. I can see why you're hurting. You know, I didn't have that around me.
So what did you have around you at that time?
Well, I had all the wrong people. That's what I had around me.
So were they, was that kind of context with them creating this inertia that it just kept it rolling?
Yeah, just party time all the time, you know. It was just, I had my own place. I was successful in what I was doing. I had money and all that sort of stuff. And my natural personality is to give. And, you know, they could come over for freebies all the time. So all of a sudden you have these fake friends that are around you that really are just there to use. But I created that. Yeah. You know.
Because you wanted that tribe.
Yeah, I just wanted that tribe. I wanted that belonging, you know. Yeah. And then all of a sudden a friend of mine who I was working with could see that I was in a bad place. And he invited me to church one night.
Okay.
And I went to church and, you know, I guess I found God. I really didn't find God in their way. I found it in my own way. And that's...
Can you tell us about that? Like, what was that? Was it a sudden thing, or was it a mental decision, or was it an internal experience, or what happened for you?
For me, it was a slow burn. It wasn't something that was bang, you know, but it was a slow burn. But I found that father figure. Yeah, I found, you know, someone that I could be totally raw with and get that fathering that I desired. And
This is like in the Father God.
yeah, Father God, and I'm not a super spiro person, and to some people this may sound a little bit foreign, a little bit out there, but this was just my journey.
Yeah.
And what I found and what helped me, because at the end of the day it had nothing to do with any man.
Yeah.
And I went on this journey of actually finding out who I was, which
Wow.
is such a massive part of addiction.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
tell me about that. Like about that journey. Like how did that kind of unfold?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit of an extremist, and I basically, for 6 months, just all those people anyone that was a negative impact or whatever, I just drew a line.
Yeah.
And I spent 6 months just going to work and coming home. I didn't go to pubs or anything like that. It was almost like I was on a detox, but it was an emotional detox. It wasn't I'm trying to get off drugs or trying to quit. And I was smoking at the same time. And smoking was easy for me to give up because, I basically...
As in smoking pot?
I was smoking pot and I was smoking cigarettes. Yeah. Smoking was easy to give up because I just watched my mother die of lung cancer from being a heavy smoker. So this is all happening my son's been taken away, my mother's passed away, who's my rock. Yeah. Who's been the only consistent thing in my life. So that took me on a really dark spiral.
Because she was the emotional safety zone.
That's right.
The one who really nurtured you.
Yeah. And I still today remember putting my heart and my head on her stomach and just hearing a heartbeat and feeling my head lift up and down. And, I did that all the way through high school,
Wow.
Yeah, because she was the only consistent person in my life. And she was my mum, you know. Yeah. And
that's so special that you had that.
Yeah. And she was...
Out of all that whole environment, that is so nurturing and healing. And
so when she went, again, I wasn't in a really good place to embrace the journey of her going.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Just kind of happened.
It just happened and I couldn't compute.
Yeah.
I was just so numb inside. Whereas when both my real dad and my stepfather all died of lung cancer from smoking, and it was in a really quick, they were pretty close together, I was in a good place. I could see the transformation.
Right.
I actually spent a month with my stepdad, and I spent the last 4 days sleeping in palliative care with him. I could compute, but back then I couldn't.
Because this was after you'd really...
Yeah, this is many years ago. Yeah, later, So it was... So I had that, my rock gone, and it affected all us boys, really. Like, all of us were destroyed when she left, because she was the only consistency in our life.
Like
unconditional love, with just there to serve us, just loved us, just cared about us.
Yeah, no matter what you did.
No matter what we did. She had this saying that would just cut you like a knife. And she goes, I have to love you, but I don't have to like you. And she'd say that and you're just like, oh. And I still use that saying because it's so true, because sometimes you just don't like the person they're being. Yeah. But you still have to have that foundation of love. Yeah. And, I'm here. Yeah. I love you. I'll protect you. Yeah. I just don't like you right now. Yeah. We'll come back. But so that just took me all into a really dark place. And then when I finally went to church, I went on this journey of really finding who I was, which a lot of people don't take the time to do. They just continue doing this. It's Groundhog Day every day. But I'm going to say it's divine intervention, and I'm going to say it's that something clicked in me, some sort of self-empowering to go, hey, I want to be a better person. Right. I don't know what that was, but it happened in me. It happened. And I can't pinpoint it, and I can't say, but I just wanted to be a better person. I wanted to be a better dad. By that time, my son was distant and away, and I really wanted to do that. So I went on a 6-month journey where I had pretty much no one in my life, and many times it was almost like torture, where I'd literally just be laying on my bed just crying. It was almost like a purge, just feeling empty and having the cravings to go and feel that emptiness and going, no, I'm not doing that. And it took me because I did it on my own, you know.
Yeah, it must have been a very powerful experience to bring you out of that experience of dealing with the emptiness with things that actually are very powerful pleasure experiences.
Yeah.
You know, to bring you to the point where without it consciously knowing what was going on, you stop that.
Yeah.
Like you say, and then you, even though you still felt empty, you know, and were going through this, what you said, emotional purge.
Yeah.
You somehow didn't go back to that. That's powerful. Like, what happened with that, do you think?
Can I say grace?
But say what you think. I mean, I'm interested. I'm really genuinely curious.
I just think I just saw from my own perspective that was a life. I watched it with, you know, my father. I watched it with my stepdad. Even my mum was a pack a day cigarettes and cup of coffee cigarettes. And I just watched all these unhealthy vices that they had in their life to feel whatever emptiness, or some of them just become habits.
Right.
And I went, I just got this whole view of life is so precious. Life is beautiful. That's what switched in me. Like, right. I just went, because my mum had died so young. She was only 53.
Yeah.
You know, like, she's 4 years older than what I am now. I'd be devastated if I went in 4 years. You know, I've got so much to do.
Yeah.
I want to raise my kids.
Yeah,
you
your
know?
kids would be devastated.
Yeah. So I just thought, this is not healthy. But I didn't know what the out was. I didn't know. That's why I love what you're doing. You know, I didn't know what the process was. I had no one to go to. And I didn't really even go to people in the church because some of them were just, I'll be honest, were out there. They're just too freaky spiro for me. And I'm a super practical person. So I was like.
What do you mean by too freaky spiro? Just so that I kind of think I know, but I'd like to check that.
I felt like they were living in a world that they created, that on a set of beliefs that they created,
right.
Not necessarily. So I felt, and plus they had influences on the outside through leadership and all that sort of stuff that created this structure or this belief system that said you had to be this way.
Right.
And me naturally.
And you instinctively had a different view to that, even though you'd only just come across it.
Yeah, my view was all based on love, not performance.
Right.
My view was based on, hey, I want to be a better person. I want to live this life. I want to love. I want to absorb. I want to give, not take.
Yeah.
That's where.
Is that what kind of ignited in you?
Yeah.
This real kind of passion or burning. Well, I'm putting words in your mouth.
Yeah.
But this eruption of desire to be loving.
Yeah, I've seen the complete opposite, and I can see the damage what it did, and this through especially men with their insecurities. You know, we have this whole ochre, tough as nails, and macho, tear each other down and take the piss out of each other instead of like being sincerely concerned about your mate, you know, or being there for, and that's just something that's part of our culture that's been bred through, you know, TV and whatever, you know.
And having to go to war.
Yeah, war. And I just didn't want to be that. I really wanted to find my authentic self. And I'm still on that journey. I think I've come a long way, but there's still things that I'm constantly fine-tuning within myself. Yeah. But I just knew drugs, alcohol, and I still love a beer and a whiskey and all that sort of stuff. I don't smoke anymore, but I wanted to see life through clear lenses.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I wanted no filters.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm a big anti-social media person, because there's so many filters on life through that.
Yeah.
And I just see the damage that it does. So for me, the addictions would put filters on, would mask the real issues in my life, and I wanted to face them, and I wanted to work through them. And that's the hardest thing, I think, when you have addiction, is to actually face it and work through because it's not an easy process. You've got to get to the core root. Yeah. And often the symptoms are not necessarily the illness, you know, so it's more referral pain. It's not what's the core thing. And I really wanted to get to the core.
So would you say that for you the addictions were not necessarily the main problem, but they were an attempted solution to the empty feeling?
Yeah, totally.
And so you tried that solution.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't working, in the sense it was maybe temporarily band-aiding, but it wasn't actually a long-term. You could see it wasn't a long-term solution.
Yeah.
And then this other powerful love, how you explain it, kind of came. Yeah. Motivation came.
Yeah.
And you had and that you clicked this real desire to be clear.
Yeah.
And I guess you must have seen that somehow.
Yeah.
Whether consciously or unconsciously, as a better solution.
Yeah.
Did you feel loved when you had that conversion kind of time? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I felt love, but I felt permission to go on this journey and find who I was, because I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
I was the guy that knew it all.
Oh, that's not how I know you.
No, I was super arrogant. You know, my whole driving thing was to be successful.
In terms of money.
Business and money and all that sort of stuff. And this whole fakeness of, you know, I'm going to have this and all that sort of stuff. And it was just a house of cards, you know. It was just pure driven stuff to get stuff. And once you got the stuff, you just felt empty.
Right. So that sounds like it was another attempted solution.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, for that stuff to be somehow creating happiness.
Yeah. And I thought it would fulfill me. And so I've been on this massive journey to get free of addictions. And listen, there's been other addictions, some of them healthy. You know, I lost 20 kilos, and that exercise become an addiction for me, but I've soon recognised that. I've backed off that. I pretty much certain surfing's an addiction, but I'm okay with that because I really I found my tribe there. I found a real centre. I know who I am and I feel really comfortable. But the process, this is the thing, is that people think that, you know, the addiction, you know, coming from addiction to freedom is like getting through the withdrawals. But if you don't get to a place of a solid foundation that you can fall back to, because I have my ups, I have my downs.
Yeah.
I need a foundation to go no matter what. That's going to keep me in a good place and keep me in a safe place. And for that, it's my faith, where I can go and I can meditate and I go, right. Because it's too easy to implode and start destroying stuff around you through your lack of maturity to go, hey, I've got issues within me. I need to work through this before, instead of projecting it onto other people and attacking other people and thinking it's their fault. It starts from internal, and you have to have that foundation to go back to. And for me, it's my faith. Yeah.
So sounds like that in a way was a real turning point, and also continues to be.
Not a way, it was.
Yeah, it was.
It was the turning point.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also you're now saying that it's also kind of the foundation that keeps you solid along in the journey.
Yeah.
And so how does that look for you? Because, you know, for some people, when you mention church, they'd be thinking people who believe in fairy tales and blindly, irrationally, you know, running their life on a set of ideas. And I know that from knowing you, I know you don't think that, and I'd really love for you to kind of unpack or share that Like,
Yeah.
where are you with what is that foundation for you? How does that work? If it's not those things that it looks like on the outside.
For me, the foundation's quite simple. Is God is a God of love.
Right.
He's not a God with a to-do list and a performance-based KPI list that you have to keep on ticking.
Or you get punished.
Or you get punished, yeah.
Right.
I don't go to church, but I believe in the foundation of who God is, which is that agape love, that unconditional love. No matter what, I'll put the people I love above myself. And you come to a servanthood heart.
Right.
You're here to serve.
Yeah.
You know, as a father, if you always have the mentality that you're there to serve, even when you're frustrated, and I don't do this all the time, don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. This is not reality TV, you know, that's totally manipulated. I fail, I make mistakes, but I can go back to that foundation that says, okay, I'm a loved son of God Most High, and I've been imparted with those gifts to pour into people around me, you know, mostly my family, you know, because I'm with them all the time.
Yeah.
That's my foundation. And I don't do it right all the time, but when I get frustrated, when I get angry, or when I'm failing, I give myself space and I come back to that foundation where I go, right, these are the core things. You must love others. You must serve others. Even my business is built around serving other people.
Yeah.
And that everything I do is, we don't own customers. We're there to serve them. At the end of the day, that's the only power that we have, is to serve. And that is a clear lens that I never want to put frosting over ever again.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds so simple, but I'm just, the way you're describing it is so powerful as a force in your life.
Yeah, it's been a journey and it's been lots of failures. But again, it's, you know, it can be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It could be 1 step forward, 3 steps back. Yeah. But the thing is, and this is the key, is that you keep moving forward. And I know that's a cliche and it's, you know, it's a meme, but you have to get up and go, today's a new day. You hold yourself, you know, with accounts, because you stuff up. Everyone stuffs up. You make mistakes, you know.
So it sounds like the way that you're handling your stuff ups, it sounds very giving yourself a lot of understanding. Sounds like you're actually giving yourself the kind of love and acceptance that you would give your son when he stuffs up.
Totally.
Is that part of it? Like, that the love is not just about that you're already loved, and so that's already and inherently, unconditionally a safe ground.
Yeah.
And the journey of life, the mistakes, whatever, are all, they don't diminish you as a person. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. The disclaimer there is that, I lost the wording for that, but it's, you don't dismiss the actions, you know. You've got to take responsibility for your actions. Yeah. It's not a grace-free card. Yeah. So it's not this whole thing of, oh, it's okay, I stuffed up, I did this.
I'll stuff up again tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll stuff up again tonight. You know, a perfect example is, you know, in my marriage we have some absolutes. Number one absolutes is we don't cheat on each other. That's an absolute. And we have to hold that to account. So you still have to have lines in the sand for certain things. Yeah. But you also have that grace for the small stuff that really doesn't change your foundation. You know, it could be a harsh word. It could be a frustrating line that you throw out to your spouse that you know hurts them. And it's been many times I've done that, and I've had to come back and I go, you know, I've got to hold myself account for that. I know who I am. That's not the heart that I hold. Yeah. I'll have to go and apologise. Yeah. So when you have those things in place, addiction doesn't replace them, because you have them yourself to go, right, I don't need a I don't have a round peg to go in a square hole. All my pegs fit perfectly. I have the emotional intelligence when I'm feeling anxious or when I'm feeling those indicators that used to drive me to addiction.
Yeah.
I take the time to go, where's that coming from? Do I need to remove myself from the situation? It's been times over the years where I've just had to remove people out of the situation. Social media, I'm very limited.
Out of your life.
Out of my life, yeah. Social media, I'm very limited on. We do it for business, but outside of that, I really don't want any part of it because it's not healthy for me. Other people can do it.
Yeah.
And you know, I've got a few friends that are influencers, make good money from it and all that sort of stuff. But for me, there's too much comparison, which I know is a round peg in a square hole for me. If I don't have the comparison, then I don't even have that hole to fill.
Yeah. You don't feel the lack.
I don't feel the lack. Yeah.
So but it sounds to me like you almost have a shield to prevent yourself from being in that because you don't have a lack as much because you've got the wellspring of love.
Yeah. And through that wellspring, just as you can make bad habits, you can make good habits. Because habits are part of who we are. Like, you know, I try and make good habits in my life, you know. I try to get up in the morning and not look at my phone. You know, I try to make my cup of coffee and just absorb what's going around.
Yeah.
Some days I fail. Yeah. And I feel good about that. So I go back to my foundation.
Yeah.
And I go, what habits make me feel good? So, you know, I think when people are struggling with addictions, and there's real addictions where the craving is overbearing and it has some physical.
Yeah.
I personally didn't experience that because I think I was so determined to fill the emptiness with something else. And I made a choice through finding God and all that, reading and listening, that I was only going to put good stuff into me.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to go after bad stuff that would give me some sort of temporary detachment of where I wanted to go. And I think for me, life is just so precious and beautiful and great. I want to enjoy as much of it as I can. And as you get older, the reality of mortality comes into play. And you go, well, I'm running out of time here, so why I've got mobility, why I can do what I'm going to do, I'm going to live life. But again, there's balance there. It's not like, I'm going to have a midlife crisis, I'm getting rid of everything and I'm packing everything in a van, I'm going to go around Australia. No, it's just that balance of going, what's my heart?
Yeah.
What's that foundation? I can't just drop everything. I've got kids to raise, a wife to support, a family to support. Like, I can't just do that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop the journey.
Yeah.
The journey is real.
Yeah.
I want to absorb and And one thing for me that I think is a real powerful thing is that if everyone focused on their family first and built from out there, I think the world would be in a better place.
Yeah. Well, I actually do see that with you, and I'm just reflecting kind of as I talk, that you started in a place of bewilderment and had some real impacts on you, and in a way you were kind of like drowning.
Yeah.
And that in that emptiness. And in a way that there was a real like self-focus, me focus. And then after the love hit, it sounds like that's just growing. And now your focus is, like you say, serving your customers. And I know I observe you in the community of surfers, how some people are obviously about them mainly, but you're actually one of those.
Noticed. No, I'm just joking.
But you're one of those people that actually makes a point of actually extending out to connect with people. So that love is, I can see that's growing.
Yeah.
I mean, from what you, even just in this conversation, I can see that the growth of that. Is that something that you resonate with?
Yeah, I truly believe freedom comes in when you freedom from everything, when you take your focus off yourself. I feel that's the slipstream when and my son would say the same, because, he was having some struggles. This is my eldest boy who's 24 now. He was having some struggles. You know, he's from a split family and there was some issues going in, and I don't want to talk about those because I want to respect him. But I made a choice, and it was from a heart choice. It wasn't a practical choice to take him to Africa and work in an orphanage for a few weeks and be part of that journey, just so he could experience a world of serving, a world of something that's more than about him, and really see the world, not the micro, see it in the macro.
Yeah.
And he says that it was so compelling it changed his whole view. And I'm super proud of who he is, and he's emotionally intelligent. Like I did not have that emotional intelligence. I can only think that he gets it from his mum's side.
Well, I'm actually thinking he probably gets a lot of it from you.
I did not have the emotional intelligence that he has at 24. I was a mess. And I just I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, like that's so good who he is. And he's so confident. He knows who he is. He's super confident in himself, but he has that heart to serve. He loves to serve us as a family. Like he loves it. He takes it on and he gets fulfillment out of that. And I'm just so grateful. Now I've got to move to the little one and hopefully he gets it, because there's total freedom when you're serving others and doing other things. It's not about being not striding. It's not about trying to do it forcefully or fakely.
Yeah.
It's got to be a place where it's natural.
Yeah.
And when you're in that place, you are in a place of freedom, I believe. That's how I see it.
Yeah. So when you're in that place where it's not forced, where it's natural, and I know you didn't say it, but I'm putting it back in. Experiencing this slipstream of love, which manifests as service. Because in a way, you can really see how giving is receiving, because you know, if you're serving, but you're so fulfilled.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And that's freedom.
Yeah.
When you're fulfilled, you're free.
Yeah.
Nothing can hold you down.
Yeah. It's a different kind of freedom, isn't it, than the freedom of being able to go and buy whatever you want, or spend your time in any particular way, or travel in any direction. It's a different kind of freedom.
Yeah.
They're all external kind of limited freedoms. What you're talking about is an internal freedom that's ever present almost.
Yeah. And I think people can find it with or without God. For me, it was God. But I think if they start this journey, they'll find God in the journey, you know. And that's, like I said, I don't go to church and I don't do any of that stuff. I just know what love is and what agape love is and that. And
so tell me, just for people who don't know, you said agape love.
Yeah.
What is that for people who don't know that word?
That is total unconditional love. So when you see someone that's broken and hurt, and they may not even be like someone in your sphere, but you can look at them and you can see the brokenness, you can see the hurt, you can see the insecurities, and you know me, I don't nail this all the time, but if you look through those lenses, there's a real freedom in all that, because you're not looking at the world in a negative spiral. You're not putting this narrative into your head that feeds addiction of, you know, this is bad, they're bad, the world's imploding, you know. I'm bad, I failed, I'm a failure.
I'm hopeless.
I'm hopeless. Instead of going, you're not even having that dialogue anymore, because you're looking externally. You know, even when I have internal dialogue, it's all about, how can I be a better person? How can I, if I've got that whole anxiousness because of something's happened, I take responsibility for my actions in it. That's so freeing.
It sounds to me like your true north is, whenever something's going on. How do I be loving in this situation? Would that be it?
Yes. Now, being loving doesn't mean you're a walkover.
Yeah, totally.
Okay?
Yeah.
You can be loving and powerful.
Yeah.
You know, I have to do it at work. I have employees and all that sort of stuff. I can still love them and I can still communicate to them, but I can still be very direct and deal with the issue at hand.
Yeah.
But I bring it with empathy.
Yeah.
And it's not about me anymore.
And you're not putting them down as a person.
No.
You're addressing their actions for everybody's good.
Wasn't always like that. That's the reality.
Yeah,
you know, early on in my business career and running my own business, I wasn't the best boss. I wasn't the worst boss. I always had empathy for people, but I could snap. I could react. It's highly reactive. Now I can sort of absorb and take my time. And if I find that I'm ready to pounce, that's when I pull back.
So you've got this internal kind of feeling awareness where you feel the charge rising up, you're starting to amp up.
Yeah.
And you recognise that as me needing to pull back, reflect, rather than allowing that to motivate whatever action might happen, you know?
Yeah, because all those things not only ruins their day, it ruins your day. All these things are little things that erode who you are and your confidence and brings you back to addiction. It's just little chips away, and you get into this reflective place of, I'm a terrible person, I'm a terrible boss, I'm a terrible husband, I'm terrible. I may as well just go on a bender. I may as well, you know, instead of going, I can do that better. There's been plenty of times I've apologised to people, even staff, where I've walked over and I go, listen, I've been harsh. That was the wrong thing to do. I apologise. Yeah. You know?
So I think that's powerful.
It's freedom.
Yeah, it is freedom.
Yeah.
Would you say with addiction, I mean, we talked about kind of drug-related addictions and I know that you and I have talked about other addictions like porno addiction.
Yeah, totally.
And, you know, codependency addiction, things like that.
Can we talk about pornography addiction? My real dad, when I met him when I was 18, he gave me two things, a porno VHS tape and a jacket.
This is when he first met you. Yeah. This is his...
Well, he obviously didn't first because he left when I was 5, so he knew me for 5 years.
Yeah, but as an adult?
As an adult, those are the two things that he gave to me.
How do you respond to that?
Listen, I was so screwed up in the head and all over the place. It was whatever.
Was he just trying to connect with you? And
he was just connecting with me, and I didn't want either of those things. And, you know, I've had this conversation with my son and, you know, because these are my experiences, like pornography is such a massive addiction for, I can't talk for women, but I know for guys. What do they say? Guys watch porn, women read porn. And I explained to my son, you know, earlier on, and I'll do the same for my other boy, I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't exist because they're now in a world where they have devices and it's easy to get on. All they got to do is flick on the TV now and it's there in front of it, not like when we were growing up, you know. So I've got to be real about it and I've got to be confident in speaking to them about what it means when that stuff comes into your head versus the reality. And I've got to give them that. And I did that for my boy and, you know, and he understood it. And I'll do it for my other boy. You know, I'm just grateful I've got boys. I would hate to have a conversation with a daughter about it. But
I reckon you'd handle it.
But it's it controls so many people. Yeah.
So what were you saying there was that you felt it was important to have a conversation with them about the world of porn versus the world of sex in a relationship. Yeah.
Again, what it means to being in a loving relationship and the reality and what it means.
And how porno impacts on that.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, because when I was younger, I had that addiction, you know, everyone that I knew was into it, you know, and again, I had to go on this journey of going, well, that then becomes about me. No woman can live up to that reality. And, it was really important for me to have that understanding, and I'm glad that I can now pass it on to my boys.
So would you say that porno addiction, was that one of these ones where it comes from a real kind of, base desire, or was it also trying to fill that emptiness? Was there a difference there or not?
I think it was just a desire and the endorphins and all that sort of stuff. So,
yeah. And then at what point did you recalibrate that around love? Was it after you kind of started to get free of the other addictions?
Yeah, totally. And, and it's another reason why I'm actually trying to get totally away from a smartphone, and like I'm an extremist in that way, is because there's just too much garbage there on social media that I just don't want to see. I don't think it's healthy for me.
Oh, you mean like when all of these things coming up with girls, in their gym gear and
all that sort of stuff. Like, I don't
it's really quite provocative.
Yeah. And I'm not a moron. I understand how the algorithms work and what they want to do, and it's always been sex sells. Even in the world of social media. Yeah. I just thank God that I don't have a daughter today. I just, oh my gosh. Anyway, I understand that sort of stuff, but I really paused on this point because I thought it was really important, and maybe someone's listening to this that a father and has been hesitant to discuss it with their son. Yeah. It was the best thing I ever did.
So what you're saying is rather than kind of let it be under the radar, you're suggesting that you bring it out in the open because it's already out in the open.
That's right.
And actually pass on your genuine experience about the realities of that.
On the flip side of that, also let them know that there's no judgment or shame from me.
Right. Yeah, no shame.
No shame and no judgment.
Yeah.
It was really important for me to bring, because, again, judgment and shame drives addiction as well.
Yeah.
Massively.
Yeah.
And I want my kids to know that they're loved no matter what they do.
Mm.
There'll be consequences, whether it's in their own world or whether it's something, for the little one, it's something I may put in place.
Yeah.
But I want them to know that it's real.
Yeah.
It's out there. It's in your face compared to where we were as kids, and you're not going to be judged by me.
Yeah.
And you're not going to live in shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, that's, again, I can really see that coming out of that wellspring of love.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I'm kind of feeling like we're starting to need to bring it to a close, but before we do that, I'm really curious to ask you, I'm personally really curious to ask you, you've come this journey from, like we said, quite a bewildered, in a way, beaten down and lost place to where it became very painful, and you tried different things to solve that problem, addictions being one of those, and also getting external objects, money and all of that to solve that. And now, and then through the love that you found, like divine love that you as you've said, and how that's kind of grown in you and you expanded into the ways that you handle all different situations. So now you're at this half of your life, 50 coming up.
Yeah.
So for the next half of your life, and I'm just wondering, how do you envisage like that occurring in terms of from addiction to freedom? What kind of freedom do you see yourself, that kind of freedom growing, or what are you imagining your life will be like as this journey progresses? And also, like you said, knowing yourself, like I'm just wondering about what your thoughts are there.
I've never really thought about it. I'm in progress,
The progress bar is still going.
Yeah. I don't know whether freedom has a limit on it, or it can be put into a structure of some sort. I think once you're free, the objective is to maintain your freedom and not jeopardize that freedom, because once you jeopardize that, it can put you into a spiral. And yeah, I've come close to over the years where I'm like, maybe. And so for me, for the next 50 years, I want to be the best dad I can be the best husband, but not in a fake way. I want it to be organic. I want it to be natural, and I want it to be self-reflective stuff that will just constantly evolve. And I'm hoping in the future I will be this person that's more loving, can see things, like my lens becomes clearer.
Yeah.
Yeah, how your eyesight starts to fade. I'm hoping that I become like the Hubble telescope in that regard. So it just continues to grow and I can see things, because I really love that feeling of not being shaken by stuff, because you can just go, I know I'm getting better at it. And I enjoy that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Mossy, it's been a real honour and a pleasure to have this conversation.
Do we do a fist pump now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah. No, and I'm sure that this will resonate with some people who listen.
Yeah.
But I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. And that's why I like hanging out with you too.
I love hanging out with you, Grizz.
I mean that thought that you said today might get a second surf in today. That was still in the back of my mind.
Yeah. Well, I thought about that during this conversation.
This is our addiction.
It's our addiction, yeah.
So anyway, thank you to Mossy on behalf of everyone who's listening, and I really look forward to if you've got any comments or thoughts. I'd love to read those and respond. Other than that, we'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.